So today we're going to make wild rice and cornmeal pudding. So we're going to start off with our wild rice meal. Again, it looks a little bit darker, kind of like a sand. We're going to pour it into our bowl. That's 1.5 cups. We're going to pour our yellow cornmeal, again 1.5 cups, so equal amounts. We're going to add a little bit of ginger. Give it some nice flavor. And a little bit of nutmeg. These two are going to smell wonderful after we bake it up. And a little bit of salt. We're going to combine those ingredients together. Until they're well mixed. There aren't any pockets of yellow cornmeal any around or any pockets of wild rice meal because it's all mixed together. And now you have your dry ingredients, and so you're going to move on to your wet ingredients and you're ready to go. Alright, so now we're going to get started with bringing our liquid ingredients up to temperature. So we've got 6 cups of skim milk. We're going to pour them into our pot. We've chosen skim milk in order to reduce the amount of fat that's in this recipe, even though we are going to add a half a stick of butter. Excuse me, a whole stick of butter. Even though we're going to add a stick of butter. Now I've got our stick of butter, and this is unsalted. Again, controlling our amount of salt. And 1 cup of maple syrup. Just let that all drain out. Now we're going to bring our temperature up to a medium-high. We're going to mix these ingredients together, and you want to keep an eye on this because milk has a tendency to burn at the bottom of the pot without you ever realizing it. So keep an eye on your liquid ingredients. So your milk's going to turn a nice light brown color because of the maple syrup, and your stick of butter is going to float on the top. You're more than welcome to chop your stick of butter into several pieces. That'll help it melt a little faster. And now that we've got those ingredients mixed in, we don't need to stir it too much, but we do need to check it every now and then to make sure that it's not burning on the bottom. If it does start to burn on the bottom, we need to stir it and turn down the heat just a touch. So right now what we're looking for is just a little bit of a bubble right underneath the surface of our mixture here. So there's a lot of little air bubbles that we've kind of been creating by the whisking process, but what we're looking for is kind of more like a wave on the ocean rather than these little air bubbles of foam. And once we see just a couple of those waves go across the top of our mixture, that's going to be our discernible boil, barely discernible boil. And oh, you can kind of see some things coming on here. So we are just a couple seconds away from starting to rein in our mixture. Okay. Not sure if you can see these things growing, these bubbles growing on the outside. There we go. Alright, and then right over here we've got some real bubbles coming and moving. So we are at that boil. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, give ourselves a little bit more time. I'm just going to start whisking in a little bit of these dry ingredients, a little at a time so that they get fully incorporated rather than having dry spots. I'm going to whisk very vigorously here to make sure everything gets incorporated. As those pieces of meal hit the warm mixture, they're going to start to swell and expand, and that's why you don't want to pour it all in at once, because then it swells and expands at different rates and you get these dry spots and you get these clumps, and it's really important to make sure that you're putting in a little bit at a time and keeping the mixture moving so there's no clumps forming. Your arm is probably going to get a little tired doing this. Oh, but it's starting to smell really good. You can smell that ginger and the nutmeg. There we go. We're almost done with our dry ingredients here. The last little bit. Alright. We're going to keep whisking this until it becomes too thick to whisk, and then we're going to transfer to a wooden spoon. If you don't have a wooden spoon, choose another utensil that is solid all the way through. The whisk has a tendency to get stuck. As you can see, these pieces of meal, the cornmeal and wild rice meal, have started to swell really nicely for us. And so we're getting nice and thick and coming to the surface. Ooh. All right, and as you can see, we're having some bubbles here, so we're going to turn the heat down even more as we work with this spatula. All right, now that it's kind of turned into more solid ingredients and wet, I'm going to take my whisk out, quickly switch to a wooden spoon. Now we've got our, I'm going to keep stirring. I've actually turned my heat all the way off. Sometimes when you work with a gas stove, things tend to stay hot for a long time. And we're looking for our mixture to get a little bit thicker, but not too much more. We're looking for something that is like a nice thick oatmeal, or if you've ever eaten grits, nice thick grits, kind of hard to move around, kind of sticks to the spoon quite a bit. Now we're good. See how it sticks to the spoon pretty easily? So now we're going to transition to our table and add our last bit of milk and blueberries before we put it in our 325-degree oven. So we've got our hot ingredients on top of a wire rack that's covered with a towel, and that's just to protect the surface. We've got 2 cups of blueberries that are still frozen, so we're going to add those in. Our mixture is pretty thick by now, so you can imagine that this is a really good time to have a wooden spoon or a spatula, but not a whisk. All right, we've got our half a cup of milk. I'm going to go ahead and add that in. While I'm incorporating these ingredients into our mixture, talk a little bit about our 9x13 that's right here. We have sprayed it with a little bit of cooking spray. You can also use a little bit of butter if you'd like, or you can just wipe the insides of it with a little bit of oil of your choice, preferably sunflower seed or walnut or peanut oil, or even a vegetable or canola oil, because those can all take the high temperature in the oven. And that'll keep this recipe from sticking to the pan, because it does have a tendency to stick a bit. Alright. Now our ingredients are nice and incorporated. Add them to our 9x13. Sticky in there. Come back to the rest of that. Spread this out evenly on our pan. In this recipe, generally, however smooth you get the top is however smooth it's going to come out of the oven. It doesn't have a tendency to rise very much or sink, so you want to make sure it's nice and pretty. And I've got a rubber spatula here to help me with that. And now I'm going to scrape out my pan. I've got quite a bit of porridge left in my pan. All right. We're going to smooth this out on top. Make sure it looks nice and pretty. Also, smoothing it out on top prevents certain points from burning while the rest of it's baking. So again, just make sure it's nice and smooth. Keep the inside edges of your 9x13 clean from any excess porridge, unless it's part of the pan. So you don't want any up like that. So that's going to just burn before the rest of your porridge is ready to be pulled out. is ready to be baked in our oven at 325 degrees. It's going to be in there for 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. What we're looking for is the pudding to pull away from the sides a little bit and turn into a nice golden brown. And we'll check it in 30 minutes. So it's been 30 minutes. We've been keeping an eye on our pudding. And it is all done. Here it is. It's gotten darker on the top, which we were looking for, and it's pulled away from the edges, so we know that it's nice and baked up. And our last test is we can take a knife, you can stick it right in the middle, and some pudding's going to come with it, but this time not even a grain, so that's a good sign. So we know this is baked, and we let it cool. I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece out before it's cool, though. I just can't wait. This is a really nice moist pudding. It pairs well with winter dishes. It can also be served cold. It's great with a glass of milk or some sumac berry aid or some wintergreen tea. Ooh. So we've got our blueberries in here, nicely marbled.
I'm gonna zoom in.
Do you need to push it up farther on the plate?
No, you're good.
So here we have our cranberry. Here we have our wild rice and cornmeal pudding with berries, and we've used blueberries. And you can see how the color of the blueberries has kind of marbled our pudding. It's nice and moist, it's hot, and it's going to be delicious, and it smells amazing.